The Émigrée. There once was a country. I left it as a child, but my memory of it is sunlight clear, for it seems I never saw it in that November, which, I am told, comes to the mildest city. The worst news I receive of it cannot break my original view, the bright, filled paperweight. It may be at war, it may be sick with tyrants, but I am branded by an impression of sunlight. The white streets of that city, the graceful slopes, glow even clearer as time rolls its tanks, and the frontiers rise between us close like waves. That child's vocabulary I carried here, like a hollow doll, opens and spills a grammar. Soon I shall have every coloured molecule of it. It may by now be a lie, banned by the state, but I can't get it off my tongue. It tastes of sunlight. I have no passport, there's no way back at all, but my city comes to me in its own white plane. It lies down in front of me, docile as paper. I comb its hair and love its shining eyes. My city takes me dancing through the city of walls. They accuse me of absence, they circle me. They accuse me of being dark in their free city. My city hides behind me. They mutter death, and my shadow falls as evidence of sunlight. So, what we can see here is that in just the title, we can see the French word émigré. This is the feminine version of the English translation emigrant. Moving straight into the first sentence in this stanza, we come across the sentence, "There once was a country. I left it as a child." This is quite ironic, as the use of the fairy tale description is used to describe the situation in which there were harsh adult experiences that were lived through by this émigrée. Here we see when she says, "I left it as a child," this can be seen as she's reminiscing and reliving these positive experiences from when she was a child, which can also be perceived as naive, clueless, innocent, young, unaware. She also feels as if she's binded to the truth. She's got no choice but to know that this is how it was. On the next line, we see the first introduction of the later repeated sunlight. She claims that her memory of this country she left as a child is sunlight clear. This is an oxymoron and is seen as ironic as her memory is not completely clear, as she was only a young child when this occurred. Moving on, we then see this end section of the first stanza. "The worst news I receive of it cannot break my original view, the bright filled paperweight." Just in these two lines, it is clear that no matter what anyone could tell her, she is always going to think of that as a good country. Having lived in that country and been from that country, that is the only view she has of it. No matter what her experiences may have been there, she were only a child. She were naive, young, innocent, unknowing of whatever was going on. There is an element of doubt within these lines, especially when referring to her original view as a filled paperweight. It may come across that she's being held back or weighed down by this memory because she knows that realistically, what she thinks to be happy memories are actually moments of her recollection of these negative occurrences. So if we then move down, we may then come across the sentences, "It may be at war, it may be sick with tyrants, but I am branded by an impression of sunlight." Here it's made clear that she feels she is owned by her own thoughts. She can't figure out why this has happened. She has no control. She is just a victim of her own thoughts, her own memories. And she's blinded to the truth and reality, because no matter whether her country is at war or sick with tyrants, as mentioned in the previous line, she is still stuck with an impression of sunlight which she can't change, because having lived there as such a young child, she's reminiscing, and she has formed a positive connection between herself and the country. Then moving on to the next stanza, we see in the first 3 words, the white streets. Just the word white, this can be interpreted in multiple ways. This can be interpreted as either innocent, angelic, calming. However, in this context, it symbolises surrender, to give up, to throw out a white flag. Because moving on, we then see more military language where she says, as time rolls its tanks, which shows that she believes that time is destroying the country that she once knew. And then she then moves on to say, frontiers rise between us, close like waves. This is showing that the isolated and closed off area has been taken over by this war, this conflict. And she then moves on to start speaking about her freedom in the country, which there was a lack of, by saying, opens and spills the grammar. Soon I shall have every coloured molecule of it. It may by now be a lie, banned by the state, but I can't get it off my tongue. It tastes like sunlight. She's saying that there is no freedom of speech in the country. You have no choice as to what you say. You have to follow the law. You have to do what you're told. No freedom, no individuality. And it's also saying that she's restricted from voicing any opinions she may have. She has to follow the crowd, be a sheep. She remembers this part extremely well. And once again, we see the repetition of sunlight, ensuring that we as a reader are open to the emphasis of her positive reenactments of this in her mind. The first 2 lines of the next stanza read, I have no passport, there's no way back at all, but my city comes to me in its own white plane. Even in the beginning of this, in the first 4 words, we see passport. Passports are well known to be a method of identification when moving or leaving, or any form of identification. So by having no passport, this connotes to a feeling of having no identity, that she's been stripped of who she is because she was forced to move from her country because of war. She's saying there's no way back at all. She feels as though she's trapped and can never return to the country in which she calls home. She says her city comes to her, which is personification, which is then changed when she says in its own white plane, which is a reiteration of the white symbolising surrender and giving up, like there's no hope. There's nothing left for us to do. We must only deal with the issues that the world throws at us. She then continues to personify the city by saying she would comb its hair and love its shining eyes, which shows how much she does deeply care about her country despite everything she's had to deal with. By then saying that her city takes her dancing through the city of walls, this connotes to a feeling of being constantly blocked and stopped and prevented from freedom and gaining independence and the ability to do what you want, speak your truth and your opinion. She says continuously, they. This is just making quite a big collective adjustment. So by continuously stating that her city is a they, and this they is becoming more and more sinister as she just keeps iterating, they accuse me, they do this, they do that, they circle me, they mutter death, they accuse me. It's showing that despite these innocent and very positive recallings of this country, she knows that there is darkness within that country. She knows that there is something going on. She knows the war was not that country's fault, necessarily, and was more of a, she's got no choice. She's got to leave. She's got to deal with it. But despite this, she then goes into the last line, which is incredibly significant, where it says, "My city hides behind me. They mutter death, and my shadow falls as evidence of sunlight." This here shows that the city is like a child who is innocent and vulnerable, almost the exact same as the way she was presenting in the first stanza. But it's when we realise that by referring to herself as having a shadow, concludes that her memory of the city, it follows her. She's got no escape, and that she is blinded to the reality of what is going on. There is a major juxtaposition in this last line between the shadow and the sunlight. This gives us a state of ambivalence and conflict between the light and the dark, as if it's her and her bright memories against this dark world that she has been dropped in and left. Throughout this poem, we can see that there is a semantic field of light. For example, the words bright, glow, shining, sunlight. These are all words found throughout this poem, and they may all symbolise the wishing, the hope, the optimism, positive outlook, the admiring of this country, but not necessarily the country that it is, more the country that she remembers it as.